This week, we're reminding everybody the why.
That's right.
When it comes to the school campus as a campus coach, what's your why?
Yep.
Well, my why is the 6 student leaders, right?
Yep.
When you send students onto the campus, what's the student's why? Well, the why is the greatest legacy I could have from high school is the fact that certain students come to Christ.
Working with the local church to take the hope of Christ to every student in the United States. This is First Priority. Now here are your hosts, Steve Cherrico and Brad Schelling.
Well, welcome everybody to the podcast. My name is Steve Cherrico. We're so glad you're here.
My name is Brad Schelling. I am also glad that you are here.
Well, I said we, so that was a little bit inferred.
True.
Yeah, but I'm glad that you're glad.
It's not your imaginary friend.
No. Are you my imaginary friend?
I might be. Yes.
Frenemy at the best.
Frenemy. Yes.
Love it, love it. Well, Brad, welcome back to the podcast.
It's good to be here.
It's good to be with all of our friends that are out there watching on VidLand and listening as they're driving down the road, trying not to wreck their car as they laugh at our ridiculousness.
Right?
Yeah.
That's good.
Thanks to David North, who always comments and says funny things about what we say. Thanks to Steven out in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm. Listening along.
Thanks to Debbie DeBoer, who only listens 4 times a year, but when she does, she has constructive criticism.
Is that only when she's on the podcast?
Exactly. Should we keep thanking people or keep going?
I think we should keep going.
All right. Very good. Very good.
Yep.
So
I'm only getting older.
Oh, all right. Gosh, I didn't know it was that boring. My bad. So, Brad, you got some announcements. Pretty exciting. Follow-up from last week. Talk about it.
Follow-up from last week. We are live with the Leadership Scholarship link. The application is live online. If you go to firstpriority.club, you can go to the bottom of the page, a couple ways to get there. Click on Leadership Initiatives, and the scholarship link will be right there. Or you can go directly to it, firstpriority.club/scholarship. And you can jump right in there. The only reason I shared the leadership initiative route is because there's a few other options there as well to encourage students in their leadership journey, training them on their story, training them on the gospel, just some things you can take back to your local church and equip more students, not just the student leaders of the club, but you can encourage more students to become leaders and ultimately maybe be ready for that scholarship in a few years. So,
Brad, it's my assumption that those applications that you get in, if they are connected to a particular charter or district, that you're going to make those leaders aware of who is applying for the scholarship.
Correct. We will. You're talking about directors and coordinators.
I am.
We will pass that information back along to our leadership within the network. But yeah, we have until April 15. Not only are your taxes due, but the leadership scholarship is due. So if you owe $500, you could get $500.
It's actually not on the 15th this year. It's on a little bit later date.
Is it really? I don't keep up with that.
Yeah, that's because you have an accountant. You're big time.
I do have an accountant, and my wife likes forms, so I let.
She's done February 1st, is what you're saying.
Yep, I sit, answer questions for an hour, and I'm done.
I love it. That's great. That's great.
Yep.
Well, so let's jump into story.
Okay.
So the story this week actually comes out of our local chapter. Try not to do that very often, but I'm around FP National.
You are a little biased, but that's okay.
I am. If anybody wants their story told, they all have my number. Just tell them to call, right? Or to text.
We can have them live on the podcast even.
That would be awesome.
We haven't done that in a little while.
So we have a new intern out of Lipscomb University, and Lexi is working on a project that we worked on in 2019 called Your Story Matters. She's going to bring that back, and she's going to go around to our different campuses with our coordinators and our campus coaches, and she is going to ignite the Your Story Matters brand.
I like it.
And really get students to take, in 60 or 90 seconds, take their story and put it down of what Jesus has done in their lives. And Jesus' story matters because it's inside of their story.
Yep.
So pretty excited about Your Story Matters, and want to invite those that are on the socials to keep their eyes open, because the first of those is launching in the next couple of weeks.
I like it.
Yeah,
I like it a lot. And just so, I don't know if you knew this or not, but there is some training on the Your Story Matters concept on the Leadership Initiatives page.
Really? I didn't do that on purpose, but that's awesome.
So as I talk about that, if you click on story training, because it is your story, you're learning how to share your story. That talks about sharing your faith story. It talks about the My Share Pal and learning how to use that. And then it talks about the Your Story Matters. So if you want to take the Your Story Matters concept that Steve just talked about to your local area, that is right there on the Leadership Initiatives page.
Yeah, exactly right. We don't own it. We're just using it.
Mm-hmm.
It's great.
There's already people on YouTube and other places that have gotten a lot of that for a lot of different reasons other than Jesus, which is just fine.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
Well, Brad, we're here this week following up.
Yep.
I don't know if that's the right term, but going to the next place in the conversation.
Okay.
Last week, for those of you who listened, we did a pretty thorough view of the baseline, which is the club.
Yep.
Right? How do you start it?
Yep.
How do you run it?
Mm-hmm.
How do you follow through on it? I love that you changed the follow up to follow through. I wrote that down in my notes.
Nice.
Right? How do you follow through on that? And how do you then do it again?
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
And so this week, I want to talk a little bit about the fact that, and I'm going to set you up, that in all reality, even though we're a club model, if the meeting is the point, then the meeting doesn't matter.
Correct.
And I'm going to throw you a softball and let you jump in on that.
Uh-oh.
Because, I mean, the kids have got to meet, right? So what do I mean when I say the meeting doesn't matter?
Yep. Well, you mean that's not the point. It's the tool. From beginning, the top end of first priority, all the way down to what you just said, first priority is a tool for the local church. We talk about that on a big picture level. We're not a parachurch ministry. We are a local church strategy. We are not parachurch, we're pro-church. We have a lot of those things. But in reality, I mean, we are alongside the church because we are our own 501c3. We do have staff that is out there, beating this drum.
Waking up every day
thinking about this.
Yep.
But we are waking up every day thinking about how can we help the church take the hope of Christ to every student, right?
Good.
And so there is, from the top to the bottom, what you just said, we are a meeting. We are another thing for people to do. But like I was told very early on, because I asked when I went out to fundraise, why do we talk so much about the crisis in our society? It's because people don't need another thing to do. If you come to them and say, hey, we need to start a first priority club, they might not want to start a first priority club because they didn't wake up today thinking, man, I need more things to do.
Yeah, correct.
They woke up today thinking, hey, man, I've got a laundry list of things that I need to get done, and I'm not sure how I'm going to get them done.
It's good.
But if you capture their heart and to say, hey, this nation, I just saw it on a website, for the 4th year in a row, suicide is the number one killer in the world, not just America, in the world. Multiple times more than any disease, which obviously is a reference to COVID and all that kind of stuff and whatever, right? Not going to get into that insane conversation.
Please don't.
Yeah, I mean, we are in a crisis as a society, as a world. It's not just this generation, it's all of us. And so if we capture our heart to say, hey, we need to not just know that we are here. We need to know why we are here. Why are we on this planet? What is the purpose of our life? Well, there's a creator who created us and has a plan and a purpose to make the world a better place.
I love that you say that. So in my study time this morning with the Lord, in Proverbs 4, I wrote down, above all else, guard your heart, for everything else flows from it.
Yeah.
Above all else, guard your heart.
Yep.
For everything flows from it. And I don't know that you've seen this research. This is a little bit of a rabbit trail, but I'm learning that in the last few years, they have found that inside the heart, you have about 40,000 cells that match your brain cells. They're neuro cells, and those neuro cells, those neuro cells actually are what allows the heart to do its own thing, even if the brain stops working.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so when you talk about flowing from the heart, a lot of times people can't make their connection, right? We've done a lot of evangelical things to say, this is how you get from the head to the heart, right? The reality is the heart doesn't need the head. The heart is its own space where God created it to function on its own, right? And so if we start to deal with, oh gosh, we're going to grab the heart, and that the heart of the meeting is about people and about people coming to Christ. And if we're just meeting for the sake of the meeting, then you're going to find that very quickly the club is going to go away.
Yes.
Because you're not grasping people's hearts. You're grasping a meeting time. And frankly, I got enough meetings. And so do students.
Correct.
Is there a busier group of students, a busier generation of students than the ones that we currently have? And I would suggest that the answer is no.
Exactly.
Right? But busyness doesn't create changed lives. Busyness is not transformation.
Correct.
Transformation is because the heart has been changed.
Yep.
And so I love the idea that we can say, hey, the meeting actually doesn't matter.
Yep.
Unless the gospel and grasping the heart of students and transforming the heart of students.
Correct.
But if you're just meeting for the sake of saying, hey, it's E-Week, then you may be missing the point of E-Week.
Yeah, that's true. Well, and it comes back down to, the heart. You talk about the heart of God, right? And we want to be in alignment with the heart of God. But we're not really in a moment of revival where the Holy Spirit is just sweeping the nation and people are coming to know him by the thousands, right? It's a grind right now. And we find ourselves in that moment where I talk about that you have revival and you don't need a system. You don't need the structure. You don't need the rhythm of first priority. Yeah. When God calls a student to reach their school, they don't need to use first priority to do that, right? Again, it's a tool to do that. But when we have this moment that we're in and we're not there, but we have that desire, first priority, again, is that tool to say, okay, let's start meeting. Let's start talking about this. Let's equip, let's prepare, and then let's invite. And we talk about often in training students, that first invite week, they're still learning, they're still building. Even that first month is probably a pseudo training. You may have had that training moment where you're 45 minutes in, a youth room somewhere at a church and you all get the students together and we talk about it, but we still haven't done it, right? So let's go do this. Let's walk through it. Let's share the gospel, even if it's just the 10 of us, and let's become comfortable with that. It's a safe place for us then to invite people in. And so that second month, we can invite somebody, even again, if they're a believer and they go to church all the time, doesn't mean that they've heard the gospel or responded to the gospel. Because for me, I grew up in the church, but it wasn't until fourth grade that became a revelationary thing to me. And I felt the peace of Christ for the first time. For some people, it's 14, it's 16, it's 18. It could be that first priority club. So don't rule out what is going to happen in a first priority club when the gospel is shared, no matter who's in the room. And so by that second meeting, you do see that life change, because that is what it's not about a meeting. It's about life change.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. And it changes not just, I've been focusing in on the new believer, right? The person who doesn't believe and now does, but it's also a life change for the student leader. Like, we've been going to church all of our lives, or maybe just for a few months or whatever, but I'm now a leader in this club and they've given me this role, and the words of Jesus, I've sat in a pew a lot, or a church chair or an auditorium or whatever you want to say, but the words of Jesus have never come out of my mouth before. And this is a new experience for me. And my life is changing because the words of Jesus are coming out of my mouth. And now I need to wrestle with that, because when those words come out of your mouth, it changes you, right? And so the life change is happening both and. It's happening for the student leader and for the new believer. And that's really what we're all about. It's not about the meeting. The meeting is just the excuse to make those two things happen.
And if you followed Christ more than 2 weeks, then you've heard this text, but it's worth saying. Hebrews 10:24. And let us consider how we may spur one another towards love and good deeds. Not giving up meeting together. As some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another all the more to see the day. And the day is capitalized. The day where we will be with our Savior approaching.
That's right.
So the meeting is not about being there on a weekly basis and checking a box. The meeting is about having our eyes focused on a heavenly mind and being a heavenly human being, and understanding that this is a blink, and helping students see that the transformed heart is a heart that it now understands, oh, I am viewing the world completely different.
That's right.
Because I am longing for the day that I will be in eternity with my Savior, with all those who made that same decision and accepted that. You can see the snowball, right? And now the meeting is, the meeting's important because I get to be with the people of God. And we get to have that common view. And again, if you've been in church, you've heard that umpteen million times, but the idea that we may spur one another on to come the next time, to go to the next thing, because it all points towards eternity.
That's right.
Is huge.
I agree. And again, that spurring one another on is different than showing up to a meeting. And I think that's the point of this podcast, is that we do focus on the meeting, because even though we don't need another thing to do, all of a sudden I'm a club coach and I've got another thing to do.
Yep.
And so let's check the box. I can get it off my task list. And we did that over lunch, and now 1:00, okay, I'm on to the next thing, and I can check more things off the box.
Yep.
But we're there to spur one another on to love and good deeds. And so make sure that kind of stuff happens, right? You talk about the day down the road when Jesus comes back, or we go to him, whichever happens first, right?
Yep.
But it's your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as in heaven. So by inviting somebody into first priority and them responding to that gospel, whether for the first time or the 20th time, you're bringing the kingdom of God to earth, to that classroom, to your school, and it will never be the same again because of that.
Well, and so let's land this, because I think I have a way to.
Okay.
Last week, we talked a lot about the what, and you need the what.
Yes.
This week, we're reminding everybody the why.
That's right.
When it comes to the school campus as a campus coach, what's your why?
Yep.
Well, my why is the 6 student leaders, right?
Yep.
When you send students onto the campus, what's the student's why? Well, the why is the greatest legacy I could have from high school is the fact that certain students come to Christ. The greatest story that comes out of my high school career, this isn't fair, but it's my story, is 3 years after high school, Thad approaches me and says, hey, you shared the gospel with me and you may not have ever known it. And I want to tell you about that.
Yep.
Because on the basketball court, you were still the same person as you were inside the club, inside the church model that you went to. And I didn't even know it. I was just being coached really well by adult leaders who cared about my why.
Yep.
Does that make sense? So as we land the plane today, and whatever your role is inside First Priority or inside a campus, the encouragement really is, last week was about what, but this week is about why.
Yep.
And if you have a moment, whether you're driving, need to pull over, or whether you're sitting somewhere and taking notes in this, I would encourage you to write your why down.
Yep.
What is your why that you got up this morning and decided that FP is part of what you do?
Yep. That
campus missionaries are part of who you are.
Yeah. Well, and for me, it's the 2 students that I go back to, the student in Decatur, Alabama, 8th grade. I was at a club, brought some people in for training, and we went and attended a club. And I mean, this kid got up and shared his story. I mean, he had to work through it all, from horsing around and whatever to 20 minutes later talking about being in foster care and going with his grandpa and his grandpa dying, and just how Jesus has really been the foundation of his life, even though he's messing around with his buddies at the beginning of the meeting. They're all weeping and in prayer by the end. And we're in this library in the school, and there's no walls to the library. So the student body is just walking past, and there's this group of 8th grade boys weeping together, arm in arm, in a First Priority club. And just what can happen on an average, everyday, ordinary morning when you give God that opportunity.
That's good, Brad.
I know it is. That's why I shared it.
That's good.
So, did the plane land?
It did. Thanks, everybody, for being a part. I would encourage you also, if you're taking some notes, if you're writing down your why, please respond.
Yeah.
Please speak up.
We do. We'd
love to hear in the comments what your why is. A lot of people live with a mission statement, right? They have a one-liner.
Yeah.
Our board president, Dan Masuk, he can spit it out so quick. This is why he exists, right? If you've got one of those, we'd love to see it on there.
Yep.
If you got some comments, you've got some responses to what we said today, we'd love to see that as well.
Love it. Well, thanks, Steve, for another great podcast, and we'll see you again next week.
Thank you, Brad. See you soon.
Later.